Hi, I'm Rod Chappell and welcome to the Rod Chappell Show. Today you're in for a real treat. Normally we try to take real-life legal issues that can affect the public and put them in terms that we can understand and utilize in our daily life. Today we're privileged to have two candidates who are running for the 60th House seat on the Democratic ticket here in Cole County. Why, you may ask? Because we need to be involved in our legislative process. As citizens, we've got an obligation to vote, to serve on juries, and if we're not informed on the issues, we can't do our work. So today, we have the two contestants, and I'll ask each to introduce themselves with a short synopsis of who they are and why they're running. Thanks. Who wants to go first?
Sara?
All right, thanks. I'm Sara Michael. As Rod mentioned, I am running as a Democrat for the 60th District, the State of Missouri House of Representatives. I've lived in Jeff for about 22 years. I'm originally from Carrollton, Missouri, and I work here in Jeff as a lawyer. I have my own firm with my partner, Galen Carver, and we've been doing private practice the entire time, 22 years. I have two children, Ethan and Audrey, Ethan's a sophomore at Helias, and Audrey is an 8th grader at St. Peter's, and I feel very proud to be a member of the Jefferson City community, and I've been welcomed with open arms. I decided to run for state rep this year because I had simply sat back and seen enough. I work every day with people who are affected by the laws as they are enacted, crafted, changed, and modified by the state legislature, and I see how they directly impact the daily lives of my clients. And knowing that I like to be a problem solver, I like to be someone who helps people, I felt like it was time that I stepped into the fray and became a part of the solution and no longer a part of the problem by sitting back silently. So I've thrown my hat in for this year's election, and so far I've been having a pretty good time with it. The primary is August 7th, and then we'll see where we go from there, right, Kevin?
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm Kevin Nelson, and I'm running for state representative here in District 60. And I am a United States Army veteran, a small business owner, and a nurse of 22 years. And I believe that service is something that is valuable in every one of the instances that I just mentioned, and it has been throughout my entire life. And what I want to do is serve the District 60 citizens as their state representative. I've seen far too long as special interest held a grip on some of our legislators here in Jefferson City. I think it's time that we elect people who are going to help out the citizens that elect them. And that's what I'm aiming to do. So my commitment is that I'll go in every day with you in mind to serve you as your representative.
Hey, that's fantastic. Thanks for doing that. And thanks for being here today. I know that you've got busy schedules. You're talking to people, I assume. You're participating in debates. I've got a couple of questions that I certainly want to ask you, but let me just hit you with a curveball right out of the gate here.
Sure.
All right. Why do you feel it's important to have these kinds of events, to talk about the issues, whether amongst yourselves on the Democratic ticket or in the larger context of the people running for the District 60 seat?
Well, I believe it's for the same reason that you brought us in today, because people need to be informed. We are a government of the people, by the people. And an informed electorate gives us it's just a smart thing for us all to be informed about who we're voting for, instead of going into a ballot box and blindly casting votes for people we don't know or what people stand for. It's good to know the people that are running and what their values are, so that you can go into that voting booth confidently and know that you're casting a vote for someone who shares your values.
Excellent.
And I would agree with that to some degree. What I've found with the people of Jefferson City is that they vote for the people, the person versus the party. They do a very sincere job of working to make sure that their representative is someone that truly represents their interests and will be willing to fight for them. And so these types of events allows the public and our future constituents to meet us and get to know us and make that judgment with regard to, are we sincere? Do we believe or are willing to fight for the same issues and same issues and policies and procedures that they would like to see the state government do. And I think it's great that you give us this opportunity. Thank you.
I know the privilege is all mine. It really is. Why do you think, and you know politics here in Cole County has kind of shifted over the decades. I think it used to be blue, much more in line with working folks and their families, and then it shifted to red somehow, and that kind of a philosophy. Why do you think we're ready to shift back to a blue seat, particularly for District 60?
Well, for those that actually identify or affiliate with the party, and if you look at the 60th District as a whole, it's actually very equally matched. In fact, they're within very slight tenths or hundredths of a percentage point difference between those that identify as Republican and those that identify as a Democrat. The vast majority of Jefferson Cityans don't identify either way. They either identify as independent or aren't willing to answer the polling questions to provide the information, which I understand that sometimes.
Might speak to their independence.
If that statistic is true, that means for the last 20 years, half the voice of the 60th District hasn't been heard, because we have had a Republican sitting in this seat for the last 20 years, at least that I know of. And so it's time, and I think that with the right person and the right policies and priorities, I believe that this district is ready to see a Democrat. I don't know that this district itself individually would be identified as partisan as maybe the media or social media or would like you to believe. I know that the people in Jeff really care about what's happening at the state government.
I agree with you on that. Kevin?
And I have to agree with some of those points. The people in Jefferson City do look to the person who's going to best complete the job. I believe that's true. I've knocked on a lot of doors so far, spoken with a lot of people, and I found a lot of people that identify as Democrat, whereas you would think that in this city, from what you read or hear sometimes, that it's just a Republican stronghold. But there's a lot of people who do look at it and they're independent or Democrat, so they are out there. So I think that coupled with what's going on in our nation right now, I think we're going to see a tide turn here. And I believe we've got a really good chance of electing a Democrat come December, or November, pardon me.
Okay. Well, have you thought about your legislative priorities and what those might be?
Oh, absolutely. I think about those all the time because it's basically what's on my heart and mind. It's the people right here in Jefferson City. My legislative priorities would be, one, making sure that our state employees get a well-deserved pay raise. And as far as that goes, the rest of the people around the state. So wages in general. Wages in general have just been flat for the last 40 years. We had in this country for the longest time productivity and wages tied together. Well, that went away back in the 80s, and we've seen what's happened since then. Just stagnant wages. And so for me, I believe it's time that we bring Missouri at the forefront. And I don't mind if the rest of the country doesn't do it, but let's let Missouri lead in something. Let's be a state that offers high wages to its employees.
All right. Thank you. Sara?
I agree. Obviously, with Jefferson City being the hub of the state government, how our state employees are treated is an absolute priority of mine. Additional priorities that really come to me over while I've also been meeting people, and people, what we love about Jeff is the willingness of people to share. Wouldn't you agree that they don't have any problem telling you that what their priorities are too? But I agree with them. My priorities would include, opposing any efforts to attack Missouri as a prevailing wage state. Not only is it important to maintain the wages of our citizens, but if you look at the states that surround and touch Missouri that have no longer exist as a prevailing wage state, their income, the revenue is down for the state, the income for the families, they're suffering, and it's the attacks against that are just attacks against our working families. I would oppose Proposition A and any efforts like it, because that to me is an attack against, again, and it seems redundant, but working families. The unions and the power of collective bargaining is important because it allows those in the trenches to have a voice with those in the office buildings. And then I would work hard to fix or repair the damage that has been done by the Republican-controlled legislature with the school funding formula. They have changed the funding formula so that now they don't have to fund as much, but yet they're meeting the adequacy requirements of the formula itself. this is a shell game. This is a joke that they have just changed the numbers so they don't have to give as much. And then that burden falls to the local communities and citizens with property taxes and individual, propositions and levies to fund their own individual schools within the smaller communities. And then we have the Republicans talking about vouchers and charter schools, so now we're going to take more money from the state taxpayer to fund schools that they've allowed to fail by not funding. Does that, and then also if I had a magic wand and could make all of my dreams come true, the last one would be simply that I would do everything I could to repeal the most recent corporate tax cut that was passed by Governor Parsons, or signed by Governor Parsons and passed this session, because it will now put us as the second lowest corporate tax state in the nation, yet we're not the second highest corporate location in the nation. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I believe that the general revenue is funded on, it's basically a three-legged stool: corporate taxes, sales tax, and personal taxes. And when you cut one of those out, it falls to the individuals through sales tax and personal tax to fund the general revenue and continue to keep the state operating the way that it needs to.
Yep. All right. Well, and Kevin, if you would, tell me, where are you on Proposition A?
Oh, I am definite no on Prop A. I believe that the right to collectively bargain is what built a middle class in this country, and that if we want that to continue and we want it to be strong, we have to make sure that we're supporting unions and not trying to defund them. The Proposition A, I see it all over. Vote no on Prop A. I don't see anybody with too many yard signs that says vote yes on Prop A. That's because I believe that most people are against it. Big corporations, big business owners are for it. But you're going to see a lot of no on Prop A's, but not many vote yes on it.
All right. And here's a short one. I'm sure that each of you know Jay Barnes, who's served in that seat for the last, 6, 8 years? Has it been that long?
Yes.
Yes.
8 years.
Yeah. What would you do differently? Not that he's done anything wrong or bad, but what would you do that you'd want the public to know? And maybe 30 seconds each, if you don't mind.
Sure. I'm grateful that he did sit on the committee this last session that enacted the actions against Governor Greitens. So I was glad to see what he did. But I would vote a little bit differently on some issues. He voted to do away with prevailing wage. And also when it was time for the city of St. Louis to enact higher wages by passing a minimum wage law, he was not in favor of that. So while I can appreciate what he has done for us in the past, there are certain things that I would do differently. And 30 seconds or less, I guess I would just have to bring up those two things. Those are hugely important. The vote in St. Louis, it was estimated 37,000 people lost their wage increase once they retroactively took it away from them. So it's issues like that that I would have to say that I would be a little bit more different.
Okay. Sarah?
I agree. What Jay did over the last 6 months with regard to putting aside partisan politics and really working for the best interests of the state and the people of the state has to be commended, because he definitely put his neck out there and worked hard and committed himself to the pursuit of right and fair and just in his investigation with Governor Greitens. And I would hope that I would do the same as him when it comes to the representative of this district has to represent the entire district. And I believe that's something Jay worked hard to do, was represent the entire district and put aside rabid partisan politics. I don't think he was a fan of those. But when it would come to voting, I would agree. I won't always vote the same way that Jay would have voted if he'd been sitting in the chair on the day that I'm sitting in the chair casting the vote. Because I think it's, in order to be a successful Democrat in the House as it sits now, you have to be able to be reasonable and logical and persuasive in your reasons why you may oppose something or support something instead of just being seen as partisan. And I think that it takes someone with the ability to process that kind of information, apply it, and make it persuasive that's going to make a successful Democrat in the House as we sit now.
That's fantastic. Do you guys have time for a few more questions?
Sure.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us on this segment of the Rod Chappell Show. We've got two great candidates here for the 60th district seat in the Missouri State House. The election's coming up on what day?
August 7th.
August 7th. So if you don't have a plan to vote, please make one. And come back for the next segment where we're going to ask a few more questions. Thanks.
Welcome. What's up, guys? Now you're gonna make sure that you return those on Monday, right? Thank you. Oh, nice.
We'll talk to you for a second. Go ahead, give me water.
Come on, let me get your water.
Just get out the way.
Do you like this top? It's so gay.
Really?
Yeah, it's totally gay.
You know, you really shouldn't say that.
Say what?
Well, say that something's gay when you mean it's bad. It's insulting. What if every time something was bad, everybody said, oh, that's so girl wearing a skirt as a top?
Oh, you are.
Those are cute jeans, though. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Folks, why won't we go to the doctor? My uncle called, speech all slurred, complaining his arms numb. He called everyone. He even called my daughter Tiara, because, you know, she's got a year of nursing. Everyone thinks he needs to go to the doctor, including me. So he said, well, will you take me? I'm like, I'm on the road. He goes, I'll wait. Stroke's no joke. If you or someone you love have symptoms of stroke, don't wait. It may be too late. Dial 911. Time loss is brain loss.
Welcome back to the Rod Chapel Show. We are again privileged to have two candidates who are running for the 60th district seat here right out of Jefferson City. If you haven't already made a plan to vote on August the 7th, start thinking about it. Take somebody with you. It's important that we go to the polls, and many a times these midterm elections just simply get skipped. Now, this is a primary for the election that's coming up in November, so I like to think of it as a trial run. You know, are you going to get up and have breakfast before you go? Are you going to catch a ride? Are you going to get a ride to somebody who doesn't have one? Start thinking about that now so that you and your friends can show up at the polls and make all those people that say that we don't care about what happens, whether it's in the state capitol or in our local county government or in our cities, prove them to be wrong. Today we've got Sara Michael and Kevin Nelson. Thanks for coming back for another section.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rod.
Absolutely. We've had a couple of questions, and I think this is more of a personal question, and so it's probably appropriate to ask for folks who want to get to know you. What are you going to do if you're elected to stay close to your values? We hear all the time about people who get elected, they go over there to the Dome, somebody starts offering them money, whether it's in the form of being a lobbyist or it's a big constituent, whatever, and then all of a sudden they start flying away from the values that took them there. What's your plan for staying close to it?
I'll take that. Yes. Well, as you know, I've been a nurse for 22 years, and I served in the Army when I was younger. And all of that to me was about service. And I feel the same way about what I'm approaching now as I did when I signed my contract to serve in the Army and when I started my nursing program. This is about service. And if you go into politics for any other reason than for service, you're probably going into it for the wrong reasons. That's something that I've always thought of and valued is service. And that's what I'm going to be bringing is service. So I think that you just really have to make sure that you should know yourself, first of all. If you want to, anybody needs a pointer in that area, you should really know yourself before you jump in or throw yourself into a campaign. My wife, I hear her over conversations, and she'll always say, the Kevin you see here is the same Kevin that you're going to get at home. He's the same now as he always is. And that's how I feel about it. I'm just me, I have my values, and I don't think that going into this is going to change that because I have a strong value system.
Excellent. Thanks. Sara, how about you?
I would agree. If anyone's going to ask me to compromise my values, they're going to be wasting their breath. I've never been attracted to shiny objects. I have not entered into this race because I was looking for some pursuit of something different or greater or, sexy. I wasn't doing this for those reasons. I am committed to my values. It's what my values are what has driven me to make this decision, to take time away from my family, from my kids' activities, from my business, and unfortunately, my clients would sometimes they'd like me to be available to them 24 hours a day, and I can't do that because I am committed to the people of the 60th. And so the idea that my values would become compromised or that there's anything that would entice me to do that is just beyond the realm of my comprehension. It's just not going to happen.
All right, all right. If you had the chance to tell one thing to voters in the 60th about yourself, about your campaign, what would it be, and why don't you tell us now?
Well, one thing that I've really wanted to be able to convey to people is that I'm a lawyer. And that sounds, yes, I'm a lawyer, but that means that I've been specially trained in the development, analysis, and application of law, meaning the statutes that the legislature creates, that they enact or they modify. I then go about my everyday business reading and applying those to the circumstances of my clients on a daily basis. I know how words affect people. I know how important it is that those words are crafted in such a way as to actually reach the end result intended and not unintended consequences that end up damaging unintended victims. So I feel like my training as a lawyer and my experience as a lawyer is what makes me qualified for this position, and that I will be able to use those skills that I've developed to do everything in my power to better the 60th District and the state of Missouri.
Thank you. Okay.
And what I would like to share is that myself, I know what I bring to the position. What I would bring is a lifetime of service and commitment. I know that when I signed up for the Army, it was both service and a commitment. When I went into nursing for 22 years, both service and a commitment. And this campaign from the beginning has always been about you. So every day that I go in, everything that I will take will be about you. I know that I'll work hard for you because it is about you. So if you want to join a campaign that's about you, I'm just asking for your vote. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's great. And and I want to do something before we skedaddle out of here. There may be people that have additional questions for one of you or each of you together. I know that there are probably a few more events that are planned. If they wanted to reach you individually and ask you a question, what would be the best way to do that?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Sure. Well, I have a website, KevinNelsonForMissouri.com, and you can always reach me there through email on the site, or I'll be glad to give out my telephone number. It's 573-645-1901. I'm always open, and I'm always available to you for your questions. So you can approach me through the website, KevinNelsonForMissouri.com, or my telephone. Thank you.
Excellent. Sarah?
And I have emails, Sara Michael for Missouri, all spelled out, no H on the Sara, @gmail.com. I also have a webpage, michaelformissouri.com, and Facebook, which is Sara Michael for Missouri. And I will give my office number because that way you'll actually get someone to answer the phone. And that message will definitely get to me. I can be reached at my office at 573-636-4215, Monday through Friday. And if you can't reach us, I promise my assistant, who is the gatekeeper of my life, will get the message to me, and I'll be sure to get any questions answered.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's perfect. That's perfect. And I thought I might just ask you, too, what do you think is the best thing about the 60th?
Wow.
The people.
Yes.
Yeah. The people here are diverse, and like Sarah said earlier, they're willing to let you know what they think. And which is good for running for a position like ours. We want to know what you think because we're running to be your representative. And you can't represent somebody very well if you don't know what they're about. So for me, it's definitely the people in this district and how they are open to you.
I would agree with all of that because all of that is true. Plus they're energetic and they care about each other. You know, we see so much on the TV and the media these days about the divisiveness, and there's always an element of that in every community, but it's just not as strongly felt, at least in my day-to-day interactions, as it could be. And so that gives me hope for us that we can set an example for the other areas of the state, because the 60th is an incredible place to live. It's an incredible place to raise your family, and I wouldn't want to be doing it anywhere else.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, and I certainly appreciate that. Are you running into people that are having questions about how to vote or where to vote?
No, I'm not personally, but I do know that the deadline for registering for the August primary has already passed. That was in the beginning of July, but the deadline for registering for the general, which is November 6th, has not yet passed. Okay. And they can register at, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can register at the Recorder of Deeds here at Cole County, and the county clerk in Cole County, the Secretary of State's office, and I think you can even go register at the DMV.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I've not found that much of a problem either. But what I did find were some folks that were willing to let the primary pass before going to cast a vote, and I always found it as a good opportunity to bring up other propositions like Proposition A.
Right.
So it's always a good idea to go out and vote. Don't let a primary pass you by. Go out and vote.
That's right. So this is a yes/no clean proposition. Are we for it or against it?
For it.
All right. Thanks for joining us on the Rod Chappell Show. This has been another outstanding segment, at least from my perspective, getting to look at two people who are dedicated to service and serving the 60th. I hope that you get out and vote on August the 7th, and if you aren't available on that day for whatever reason, don't forget that you can take an absentee ballot. There's still time for that. It's really easy to do, and if you don't have the capacity to get out or know that you're going to be away that day, let your voice be heard. I went out to dinner one time and somebody took the liberty of ordering for me. Now, that's nice and it's important if it's your spouse or somebody who cares about you and they know what you like. But in politics, sometimes that can end up into a dish that is not served well. So do your best as a citizen and join us again on the Rod Chappell Show. Thanks.